Good evening, transmitters, lecturers, temple hosts, and all of you. Host, I would like to first 感谢天人师德，感谢老前言、前言大德, and thank our senior transmitter Jin, all transmitters, lecturers, for this opportunity to study tonight with everyone on the holy mission and legacy of Shi Zun. So Shi Zun is referring to our holy teacher, and we'll be using this term mostly during this class tonight. So everyone, have we thought about why we are able to sit here tonight to learn the true principles, propagate and cultivate the Tao? Because the patriarch, enlightened the patriarch, matriarch, also referred to as our Shi Zun and Shi Mu, right? We have two holy teachers in our time. They have been decreed by God to incarnate in the world to save sentient beings. And so they are our holy teachers who pointed the way to us when we received the Tao, if everyone remember that. So that point transmission freed us from reincarnation. Okay, so, oops. The image on the left is our Shi Zun, our holy teacher, closest to us in this time period. And the one on the right is Jigong Living Buddha. Shi Zun is the incarnation of Jigong Living Buddha. He embodied that fire element, which sort of coincides with what our Shi Zun represent, the sun. So therefore, Shi Zun and Jigong Living Buddha are of the same Holy Spirit. They incarnated in the world in different times and space to rescue sentient beings out of suffering. And our holy teacher, Jigong Living Buddha, has incarnated 72 times and has established very deep affinities with all of us. The fact that we became his disciples is due to that very special affinity. Jigong Living Buddha's most notable manifestation in the world in modern day history was probably where he incarnated as Li Xiuyuan in the Song Dynasty about 800 years ago in China. In that life, there are many popular TV shows that you can see, he would disguise himself as a messy and crazy monk after awakening to his true nature and mission, traveling everywhere, ferry all with affinities, advise the wicked and inspire those who were lost, helping them see through the false forms and return to their true nature. So Holy Teacher Jigong Buddha cultivated and propagated identical to the same ways that our Grand Patriarch Jingong did. He did not meditate or chant, did not cut off afflictions, mingle with people from all walks of life, went through the daily living toils as we all do. And he was a living Buddha. So a holy teacher is also known for his divine wisdom and employed different methods to awaken people. This is a review on the diagram of reincarnation of our soul. So because of our Shi Zun and Shi Mu, we received the Tao and freed ourselves, right, from the reincarnation between the human world, temporary heaven, or the underworld. And now we can return directly to absolute heaven, which is where our true self came from. And as we continue to cultivate and learn, we can also help our ancestors and descendants transcend this bitter cycle of reincarnation. So indeed, we have really benefited greatly from our Shi Zun Shi Mu's grace and virtues. And we must honor their holy mission and legacy by following in their first steps and spirit of cultivation and propagation to help others, right, to pay it forward. We pay their grace and also to fulfill our own vows. This is a life cycle which embeds the history of our Tao lineage or heritage. The life cycle diagram reveals the destiny of the universe, mankind, and the world that we live in. The lifespan of all phenomena, right, all of these forms, including our own very physical life, is temporary and ever-changing. Where there is creation, there will be destruction. Only our true self is everlasting because it is formless. When our body dies, right, our true self still exists. So this true self is called the Tao. And then each generational patriarch, matriarch came to point out this true self to us through the Tao transmission. Therefore, we have a Tao heritage, which began more than 7,000 years ago in the Green period, right here, with the first patriarch named Fuxi. And in the Green period, the Tao heritage was carried out by righteous kings, whom the people promoted to be both their spiritual leaders and rulers. When the kings were no longer upright, the Tao lineage transitioned to the Red period, where virtuous scholars and upright teachers carry out that lineage. And in this period, the Red period, is where all religions sprung into being. Right? So from the Green to the Red period, that was transmitted from one patriarch to the next only. Not a second person could receive the Tao at the same time. Now, then the Tao lineage transitioned from the Red period to the White period, where we are now. And God decreed this Tao to be openly propagated to commoners with affinity like ourselves. So to summarize, we have a total of 64 patriarchs, matriarch from the Green period to the White period. And if we separate them into 3 groups based on where the patriarchs, matriarchs were born, the first group consists of 18 generations of patriarchs, all born in the East, specifically in China. And so of that, 13 of them were born during the Green period, 5 in the Red period. And then the second group consisted of 28 generations of patriarchs, all born in the West, in the ancient kingdoms of India, in that area. And lastly, the third group consisted of 18 generations of patriarchs, and our Suzhun Sumu fall into this group. So of this 18, 16 of them were born during the Red period. So as you can see, we had 13 patriarchs from the Green period. The Red period had the most, 49. And then in our time, the White period, only 2 generations. So our Grand Patriarch is the first generation, second and last generation are our Suzhun and Sumu. Because you will hear sometimes that we refer to our Holy Teacher as the 18 Patriarch and 18 Matriarch. That is the reference that we can make there. And so hopefully this helps connect Suzhun and Sumu's place in our Tao heritage for us. So Suzhun is Tianlan Gufor. Gufor means literally ancient Buddha, right? So due to the space, I sometimes, I'll use the pinyin version. He is our current era heavenly decree patriarch with God's mandate to spread the Tao, right? His last name was Zhang, first name Tianyuan, and he was born in the lunar month, July the 19th in 1889 in Jining City, in Shandong province. And then with having completed his holy missions with full perfect merits and virtues, he attained the Tao, meaning that he returned to heaven at the age of 59, and God conferred him as Tianyuan Gufo, or Tianyuan Ancient Buddha. On Suzhun's birth and background, Suzhun's coming was indeed extraordinary. By the accounts of Tao elders and historical records, it was said that on the day Suzhun was born, people saw auspicious signs everywhere. And there was this harmonious energy hovering above and around the Zhang family home. So word spread quickly that a sage was born in the Zhang family, which at that time brought hope to the people who suffered so much in in the war-torn country. So Suzhen's appearance was also outstanding. He commanded a majestic look, as we can see this image. Suzhen was pure nature with a noble character, gifted, upright, and compassionate. His family was well-to-do, owned land, and had standing in the community. So he was really well-disciplined with his parents' love and nurturing. His father taught him from a young age the Confucian classics and 4 books, and in their family-owned private school. So he became well-learned before the age of 18, and he kept the ancient sages' principles and ideals close to heart and constantly disciplined himself to practice them in daily living. And Suzhen was known for 2 things. One was that he loved to learn, and he couldn't put down a book or classic that he would study. And then 2, from a very young age, he was well known to be a very filial son. So as Suzhen grew up in 1910, when he was 22, due to the wars and chaos, most young people then joined the services. So Suzhen also followed his uncle to Shanghai, a big city in China, and joined the military. And then due to his excellent work ethic and his outstanding character, he was quickly promoted to a lower ranking officer position. Unfortunately, shortly after, about a year later, he received news of his father falling ill. So Suzhen resigned and returned to his hometown at once to care for his father. After his father passed away, Suzhen helped his mother run the family business and affairs, served as a pivotal role, to support his mother and carry out his filial duties. So next, with the background, a little bit on the background, Suzhen was born into an era of civil unrest and revolutions within China, and also there were nonstop outside powers that invaded China. So the political turmoil reduced China and its people to misery and extreme hardships. Suzhen witnessed so much destruction to human lives and infrastructures, where he saw helpless and innocent people experience the horror of war one after another. Calamities were everywhere, and there were massive flooding that washed away homes, crumbled structures, and drowned countless people. Homelessness scattered throughout towns and villages. Suzhen lived in the suburbs of Jining City in Shandong province. And there also there were a lot of secret society unrest and religious groups that tried to claim territory, which compounded onto the chaos and calamities. So it was really no coincidence that Suzhen, the generational patriarch, was born at this time. He came to deliver us from suffering, the sentient beings. And we refer to this as the concurrent coming of Tao and calamities, where Tao is made available to rescue the calamities. I remember in my earlier days entering the Tao community, hearing this conversational scripture from our holy teacher. And he said, "It is such a blessing to be living in this time period. You were not born in a time of wars and chaos and don't know how much suffering and calamities there were then. So many cultivators shoulder on the calamities to rescue the world. So many cultivators suffer and were overcome by calamities. People could not cultivate, even if they wanted in that environment. It was so hard. They had to cultivate behind the scenes. Disciples, you must appreciate being born in a time of peace and prosperity." It is where we are now. So at that time, I could not connect to what the Holy Teacher was really referring to because I was not born in a war-torn country. But after studying his legacy and his holy missions, I myself made that connection, and it makes me appreciate the Tao and the chance to cultivate and propagate Tao, really appreciate a lot more. And I hope that we can take something away from this in our own cultivation. So next, our student's affinity ripened. He met his introducer, Teacher Chu. Teacher Chu. Well, Teacher Chu in today's term means transmitter Chu, transmitting master Chu. And transmitting master Chu at the time was propagating the Tao with Confucian principles. So since Sujun was already well learned in the Confucian holy classics and 4 books, he saw great value in transmitter Chu's propagation. And he was instantly drawn by the teaching to improve and change destiny for people and society. So he quickly reported this to his mother, seeking her advice. Remember, Sujun was very filial. He would tell his mother about everything, right? So he asked his mother to receive the Tao first and see how she felt about it. His mother received the Tao, came back and told him that the Tao was very good. It could restore people's true nature and help to stabilize society. Then Sujun went to receive the Tao. And then there he learned that he could uplift his father back to absolute heaven and free him from suffering. So he set his will firmly to do just that, which is the highest form of filial piety. So if anyone does not understand that term, look it up. It's repaying our parents' grace in the highest form. So Sujun started to cultivate and propagate Tao diligently and wholeheartedly with his mother. He took the vegan vow. Some of this sound familiar, right? Because this is what we do too. So he took the vegan vow, ferry people to receive Tao, and set up a home temple right away. And he followed transmitted Chu to cultivate, hoping that he could, establish enough merit and virtue to uplift his father. So we can say that Sujun's original resolve to cultivate and propagate Tao was based on his deep sense of filial duty. He set the best example for us to follow, and we should remind ourselves to fulfill our filial duty to our own parents. Here we're going to share a little bit about the circumstances from which our Sujun cultivated and propagated Tao in those days. Back then, the rule was that if one wished to uplift their parents, they must take the vegan vow, set up a home temple, sincerely cultivate and propagate the Tao, and then bring 100 people to receive the Tao. Sujun worked very hard toward that goal. And he asked his transmitter how to ferry people. Then transmitter Chu told him, you just knock door to door and invite them to receive the Tao. So Sujun did that, and he was only able to bring 64 in total to receive the Tao. Now, one very special thing about this is that all of these 64 people, they were his relatives from his same family clan. And he knocked on their door one by one, never tired of being, ridiculed or laughed upon or, questioned or rejected, right? So, and, some of them really didn't want to, right? But Sujun was very patient. He never gave up. And he spent 3 years working on ferrying all his family members, right? Extended family members, all of them. And he inspired them to all eventually cultivate and propagate following him. Now that is priceless, right? How many of us can do that? Yeah, it's very hard, right? So we all know sometimes it's very hard to motivate our own family members. But Sujun, whatever he did, it had to be his utmost sincere heavenly heart that touched upon them. So he couldn't ferry anymore. And then he was really worried and afflicted over this because he wanted to uplift his father from suffering. And then his transmitter, Chu, was very touched by Sujun's filial piety toward his father. So transmitter Chu went to consult with Grand Patriarch on how to help Sujun. And Grand Patriarch was touched, right? And then Grand Patriarch consulted Lao Mu. And back in those days, probably in the form of sand writing. And then Lao Mu was also touched. God was touched by Sujun's filial piety toward his parents. And Lao Mu instructed Grand Patriarch to revise that rule, right, to allow Suzhun to uplift his father with only 64 people that he brought to receive the Tao with that merit. So Suzhun successfully uplifted his father, and right there he felt that boundless grace of heaven and the mercy of the Grand Patriarch, and it propelled him to devote even more diligently to the Tao missions. So our Suzhun in the past would come to the Dharma class, and he would remind us all the time that we must, in Tao cultivation, we start with the Tao of humanity, right? Put our families in order first. Bring our families to receive and cultivate Tao. And that's our basic duties as a person. Suzhun achieved that. So everyone, when we receive the Tao, we try to ferry people after being inspired. We can't avoid some misunderstanding and setbacks, right? Suzhun, experienced that. We too. So for us right now, right, we too experience that. For example, there was a Tao member that told us one time, hey, the Tao principles that you all preach, they're very good, but you should not charge a merit fee, right? So some of the people, and they spread the word to say that, oh, they're trying to make money. And then another time we visited a Tao member, she asked how much we get paid for doing the Tao work. So right there, we understood that why she was not inspired. She thought we were making money off doing the Tao work, right? So yeah, we told this person with conviction that not only we don't make any money, but we have to cover the expenses of Tao propagation, because Tao is really so very precious. And she couldn't believe it. But after some encouraging and visiting with her, she did finally make the change, right? She started to attend the weekly class and also started to donate money to help the temple spread the Tao. Therefore, we must follow in Suzhun's great example to, where he exemplify his utmost sincerity, his filial heart, and his bright virtues that touch people, his own families, to cultivate and propagate following him. And if we really emulate our Suzhun and incorporate Tao cultivation and propagation into our daily living, we will for sure experience that preciousness of Tao. And in this way, we will solidify our own confidence and joy in this Tao cultivation and propagation journey. Some of our staff here, right, they experience this because they help ferry and encourage people to cultivate Tao weekly on the weekends when they don't work. And so sometimes we might have to take a day off due to some personal business or such. And then they will say, oh, today is Saturday. I feel so strange. It's like not normal because I'm not doing Tao work. So you see, we can build that into our daily living. So by 1921, Suzhun was promoted to be one of the chief disciples of Grand Patriarch, and there were 8 in total. He was one of them, and the youngest of all. And before Grand Patriarch attained the Tao, he tested his disciples to see who qualified, which we mentioned in the class that talked about Grand Patriarch. And he pretended he couldn't eat, so he complained about the Tao not being true, right? So he encouraged his disciple to, break the rule, just go out and buy meat and eat. Only our Suzhun Sumo understood that it was a test. So they were pretended to be sick, and then they insisted on not eating the meat, right? So they passed that test, on their wisdom and the true understanding of the Tao principles. Now, in 1925, Grand Patriarch attained Tao, right? So he completed his holy mission with perfect merit and virtues and returned to heaven. That's what it means. And but he did not leave instruction on who would succeed the mandate, right, to be the next patriarch. And so while the other chief disciples, they were anxious to find out who it would be. And they really didn't want to wait for Grand Patriarch's instruction to come. But Suzhun and Sumu, they worked quietly and adhered to Grand Patriarch's instructions. And then later, Lao Mu sent a message through him to appoint Lao Gu Nai Nai. So Lao Gu Nai Nai is a younger sister of Grand Patriarch. She was the incarnation of Guan Yin Pusa, South Sea ancient Buddha. So God delegated her. Her name was Lu Zhongjie to help manage the mandate for 12 years. So during that time, Sijun worked under her with complete reverence and devotion. And about 1930, though, 6 years later, right, due to this lunar, the yin and yang calendar, which sort of combine yin and yang together. So really 1 year, right? If you're born, you're automatically 1 year old, in the lunar calendar. So 1 year actually became 2. And therefore the 12 years that were assigned to Lao Gu Nai Nai were fulfilled in 6 years of time. And then another reason was that she was ill and about to attain the Tao. So this transitioned us to 1930, a very crucial year. Sujun was 42 years old. This is the year when the universal salvation of the three realms officially began. At a very special class, right? We can look at this image, sort of like this here at the Sumo's temple. This class was called the Lu Hui of the 8 trigrams. So Sujun and Sumo both directed this class. And that was when our Grand Patriarch channeled and revealed God's will to have Sujun and Sumo decree as the 18th Patriarch and 18th Matriarch, the first ever lady enlightened holy teacher, right? And then to have them be known as husband and wife in name only for the purpose of a universal salvation mission. So not in actual life because our Sujun already had a family then. So it was a match made by heaven to prepare them to carry out the universal salvation of the three realms, ferrying men and women together. Right? So God's will was to bring the Tao into the family and society, starting with the parents, right, husband and wife, to perfect the basic, right, interpersonal relationships, starting at our homes, and then extend that onto society. And so this can be achieved based on a Confucian model of true principles. Each person restores their true mind, rectify their thoughts and conduct, regulate their own family, right, which will contribute to the peace of society and nation. And then also the characteristics of open propagations where man and woman are ferried together. So for example, we have to be mindful about the boundaries, right? For example, if we are a woman going to ferry a man who is married to receive and cultivate Tao, his wife may wonder our motive, right? So therefore we need to have partners to go together and hopefully motivate both of them to cultivate. However, the test came, right? The test. When the holy message was revealed, a lot of disciples could not accept this new reality. They've never heard of it. And they felt that it was unethical to have Sujun and Sumo be known as husband and wife, although only in name, Sujun and Sumo also never heard of this. So they could not accept the decree at first. They knelt down to voice their opposition to Grand Patriarch. But Grand Patriarch urged them, to accept the mandate for the sake of salvation to mankind. Many disciples left the Tao community due to their inability to understand God's true purpose. And this was also followed by a lot of blaming, slandering, outright disrespect, and attacks directed toward our Sijun and Sumo. And that brought great pain and suffering to them. And so with that, right, our Sujun Sumo purposely avoided propagating Tao together. But then every time when they set out in their own, direction, they would, in the end, they would meet up again, as if there were divine interventions to bring them together to force them to recognize, to propagate together. And then in the meantime, all of the saints and the Buddhas, they pledge their assistance to help Sujun Sumu carry out the universal salvation of the three realms. God also channeled through to remind Sujun and Sumu of their vows from absolute heaven. And this was their mission on earth. So they finally accepted the mandate. And when they accepted the mandate, they were well aware of the suffering and hardships to come. Indeed, they were tested harshly. So we know that before the Grand Patriarch, there were very few female cultivators. We, the women, now really have benefited greatly from our Sumu's bright virtue and her sacrifice. So in the end, they've got to a point where Sujun Sumu, decided to leave Jining city to propagate Dao in Jinan, and there were only 4 disciples left that followed them. So here are a couple of images from those days that can help us piece together their difficult circumstances. This was a big test, not only for Sujun Sumu, but to test the wisdom, right, of countless disciples. And remember that we are all cultivating and propagating Tao under Sujun and Sumu's heavenly mandate, right, which was decreed by God. So those disciples thought they could, set up their own ways or shops. They couldn't. They quickly find out they could not develop the Tao missions. And so they realized it was God's will and understood that it was, it was a transition, right, from the red period to the white period. And so they all came back to follow our Sujun and Sumu to cultivate. So on this universal salvation of the three realms, we should have a good concept of what this term refers to. The three realms referring to celestial heaven or temporary heaven, the physical world or earth, and hell, the underworld. Now, before 1930, only humans can receive the Tao because we have a physical body. But started 1930, due to the mercy of God and all saints and Buddhas, and their sponsorship, really. So spirits, right, in temporary heaven and in the underworld, like those of our ancestors, they will also qualify to receive the Tao if they have the affinity to do so. But we are the luckiest, right? So we can uplift spirits from the celestial heaven, save people who are virtuous and filial in the world. That's where we are. And third one is to uplift spirits of ancestors in the underworld. Or on these two realms, sentient beings, they have to rely on the humans. Humans are the luckiest because our introducer come to find us to receive the Tao. The temporary heavenly beings, they have to find their own introducers. And then the spirits in the underworld, they have to rely on their descendants to cultivate and propagate sincerely so that they can benefit from their merits and virtues. Next, on Sujun's Tao pioneering movements throughout China. Early on in 1919, at about 31 years old, Sujun had a great sense of mission to ferry people, right, to save them, especially in the war-torn environment. He pretty much went from door to door, which we talked about, to advise people to receive the Tao. And so the Tao propagation pretty much established firmly from his hometown, right, which didn't really have a lot of people. And so Sujun thought of developing the Tao missions elsewhere in bigger cities. With his mother's permission, he sold their properties and moved from the suburbs of Jining to Jining City to pioneer the Tao. There, he bought a building and built a supermarket on the first floor to secure his financial needs. And then he set up a temple on the second floor to ferry people, especially those who would shop at the store. And then he printed like booklets to introduce Tao principles to people. So from here, we can see that Sujun was very smart, incorporating the intelligent, I should say, and wise, incorporating the workplace to be the place of Tao propagation. And so, yeah, he had a very a vision beyond, right? So in 1926, he established his first headquarter temple called Zhongshu, right? Zhongshu Tan. And then Sujun presided over this temple and used it as the base for developing Tao outward. So then later on, he moved to Jinan, which was a much bigger city. And there he set up a temple is known as Chonghua Tang, like Tang meaning temple. With when he pioneered the Tao with Sumo over there, he saw great potentials in the cities and developed Tao. Where there are a lot of in the big cities, right? Which is the same model that we use now, by the way. A lot of people, talents, and convenience transportation in Jinan City. It really the temple, the Chonghua Tang, really became Suzhun's his central command, if you will, that later on supported the next big four temples that he established later in also Jinan. So in Jinan, there were 5 big temples there, and there are here the names here: Dongzhen Tan, Tianyi Tan, Lihua Tan, Jinggang Tan. They were led by the Tao elders there. And very interesting enough that all 4 of these temples, including this one that Sijun presided over, they represent a direction, right? So east, west, north, south, and center. And of course, Sijun is representing the temple that is in the center, Chonghua Tang. And so this really symbolized that Suzhun took central command of these Tao missions, right, and directed them to be pioneered and developed by the capable leaders that he had nurtured. And it also signified that the Tao was to be propagated throughout the world as well, with the 4 temples. And so they developed through these 4 leaders developed outward through their respective units, right, and subunits of operation all over China. With Suzhun's leadership and wisdom, that was pioneer in all of the major and key cities in China in less than 10 years. He would divide them into regions, and then from the regional headquarters, and after the Tao affairs were established in those regions, he would develop Tao into the respective counties, towns, and villages. So the Tao communities were largely formed based on the counties. Suzhun also established Tao centers like what we have here in the New York City headquartered Tao Center in all the regions to support support the planning and development of Tao missions. So after these temples were established in Jinan City, right, these 4 Tao elders, they also propagated, beyond, continuously. And our Suzhun, though, he chose to pioneer Tao in a big city called Tianjin, right? Tianjin city, which proved his perfect vision in developing Tao missions and, precisely and effectively, because 99% of the Tao mission development and pioneering throughout the world originate from the Tao headquarters and communities in Tianjin City, including our very own Fayi unit, originated from Tianjin. So Tianjin sort of represents this, it's a very important port city, kind of like a symbol for a heavenly entrance that ferry all sentient beings. Now let's share a little bit about Suzhun and the Tao elders, their spirits of propagation back then and sacrifice. So there was a Tao elder named Mr. Liu, right? Liu Xiangqian. He pioneered the Tao in Tianjin. And so when he decided to go, Suzhun gave him a holy classic that was left behind by the 16th patriarch. Suzhun loved this classic. And Mr. Liu was, he sat on the park bench in Tianjin somewhere. He read this holy classic daily for 3 months. And finally, he attracted a young man who stopped by to ask him what he was reading. But this young man Mr. Yuan, he didn't understand. But then he thought, oh, his boss would understand because his boss was well educated and rich. So this young man took Mr. Liu to see his boss. And the boss saw the holy classic and he understood it was very precious. And then Of course, Mr. Liu propagated the Tao to them. They were eager to receive the Tao. Then Mr. Liu invited Sijun to come to Tianjin from Jinan to transmit the Tao to them. They became instantly inspired after receiving the Tao, set up a temple, and because of his boss, whose name was Mr. Yu, he was very, wealthy and known in the community. So through his influence, many people became inspired, and within a year, many temples established in Tianjin. So with this development, Sijun had the wisdom to assign our Tao elder Hu Huijin to manage the Tao affairs in Tianjin. And this is where it is very touching. Our Tao elder Hu, he would bike, right? So I look up the Google map a little bit. It would take by car travel from Tianjin to Jinan 3 hours and 37 minutes. And then I think I did this calculation. I could be wrong, but it's about 16 hours and 31 minutes to get there by the bike. And that's what he did. He would go there from Jinan to Tianjin to transmit the Tao. And then he would ride the bike back to Jinan. So wow, this is indestructible sincerity. And but this is how it was. The Tao elders back then, they all devoted to the Tao missions because they were touched by Sijun's virtues. And they forgot themselves. They worked nonstop to save people. And, our 5 units very fortunate to have come from, we can trace our route back to our Tao elder Hu in Tianjin. So the toil and hardship they went through were really unimaginable. We can't possibly match their effort and sincerity, but we should know that they have paved the way for our ideal Tao cultivation and propagation environment today, and we should cherish their legacy and sacrifice. That's why we have to learn our history. So by 1945, when Japan surrendered, Tao had already spread all over China. Sijun made good use of whatever temples there were, monasteries that were in ruins or not, in the cities and town squares, by assigning speakers and lecturers to hold classes and help the Tao members learn and become inspired. And that was how, that added to how Tao was able to develop so far and wide. All of the generational patriarchs, matriarchs, they were tested on their resolve and sense of holy mission. Sijun too was tested. The patriarchs incarnated in the world by vows that they took, right, from absolute heaven to rescue sentient beings out of misery and suffering. They embody absolute mercy and sacrifice for all. They would not rest, right? All the vows that we have studied and learned that they wouldn't, Buddhas and, patriarchal Buddhas were born, right? So they will not rest until sentient beings are delivered from suffering and that the world achieves harmony. Therefore, they had to take on the calamities resulted, right? They are as a result of sentient beings' karmic debt. They literally donate their boundless merits and virtues to us. So that we, the sentient beings, those can help us reduce some of our karmic debts, right? By, helping us see more clearly and become inspired to seek the truth. So this time we're involved with this person, Ma Siwei. So Mr. Ma, he was sort of like a cult leader that, he required everyone to change their last name to his last name, Ma. And so he called himself the emperor, which triggered the government to monitor him for unwanted activities. And one day, though, the police was kind of looking for him, and they stopped by our Sijun's temple in Shandong. And then, they asked Sijun whether there was anyone with their last name Ma. And Sijun replied yes, because he thought, he had so many disciples, for sure there would be one that had that same last name. And then he was immediately arrested, along with 2 transmitting masters, 1 chef, and a holy medium. And they were in prison for 300 days, right? So that was the big test. I highlighted the transmitting master XinMin Zhou because according to a lot of the accounts of the Tao heritage history, and especially recent history with 师尊师母老前言前言, they base it on his accounts, and here we know that he was really worked very closely with Shi Zun. So during this time, our Sumu really suffered the most. She traveled to each temple to calm the disciples' minds and encourage them, stabilize Tao community, and she led all disciples to bow, ask Lao Mu to help Shi Zun and those seniors to be released safely, right? And then their prayers were answered, because in 1936, Grand Patriarch's Holy Spirit came back to the human world and channeled through in Shi Zun's headquarter temple, Chonghua Tang, and then he composed the following scripture. He said, "Decreed by heaven to enact the universal salvation with a merciful heart to rescue the world, ferrying all suffering souls on board. Who can stop Jin, Wu, and Yu Tu?" Okay, so first of all, Jin, Wu, this term is referring to the sun, and our Shi Zun represent the sun, right? Providing light to the darkness where sentient beings are trapped. And then Yu Tu represent the moon, also providing the light in darkness, and that represent a holy lady teacher, Shimu. So essentially what this is saying is that Shi Zun and Shimu, they were decreed, right? They carry God's mandate to really implement, right, the universal salvation to the three realms. And they also have their boundless merciful heart to save us, right, to really get us out of suffering. And this is God's mandate, God's will to do this. So who can stop them, right? So essentially, our Grand Patriarch, came to reassure the disciples that nothing would happen to Shi Zun, and to encourage them to continue the holy mission. In 1938, this is an image on the Lu Hui. So Lu Hui means the very strict tests, right? They're carried out in the form of very special classes given to the Tao members back then. And it was God's will to have those, right? So yeah, this was a way that heaven wanted to train the sincere and capable cultivator to shoulder the Tao mission, to do the undertakings, to help Shi Zun Sumu carry out the universal salvation. Remember back then, China was in a war-torn, conflict-stricken country, and even the world is in that condition. People really suffer endlessly in despair. And then the opium that was slipped into China, remember that drug? That also destroyed a lot of lives and reduced people's will to the ground, literally, with the effect of addictions. And so heaven was very merciful to find a way to nurture impeccable leaders to aid in the effort of inspiring people to return to their true nature, improve their circumstances, and really, undo these suffering. And so the Lu Hui really served that purpose. And so to awaken the sentient beings. So in the Lu Hui, saints and Buddhas, they came to teach the classes directly. There were a lot of revelations that helped class members realize that we all have a true nature. We must use that true nature to resolve our karmic debts and change destiny. And then all of those who received this training, they graduated with great inspiration and took great vows to propagate Tao for heaven, such as our grand predecessor. And so these classes, they were really long. Imagine now we have a 2-day Dharma class, but those classes range from at least 9 days to 30 days in some of the major cities. But then in 1940, though, Shi Zun asked Lao Mu to take away these tests, right, these classes, and then just let heaven and earth test us, cultivators. These images let us imagine how Shi Zun and Shimu propagated Tao. Back then, they walked, there was no transportation, and through the rain, snow, up and down the mountains, treading the rivers, nonstop toil and suffering. the work they carry out, their sacrifice that they made, they were all devoted to saving sentient beings and rescuing the world. They lived for the people. They didn't even live for their own families. They had no time for their families, especially Sijun. So we are very blessed now because of their sacrifice that we seldom know about. So hopefully we can study more about their legacy and holy mission to inspire ourselves. In 1946, with the lead of this military ranking officer, his name was Zhen Zhonghe. He dropped all of his work and he requested 1 month off from the government to invite and accompany Sujun and Sumu to pioneer Dao in Sichuan, another big city. And so at that time, many Dao seniors, they wanted to go with them. And so when Sujun and Sumu went there, they worked nonstop, as always, until he fell ill one day. From there, Sujun's condition deteriorated quickly. And so on the full moon day, August 15, 1947, he gathered all his disciples because he knew that his time was, to return to heaven was there. And so he met with them one last time, encouraged them to continue the holy mission, bid farewell to them. And then on that evening, about 8 p.m., Sujun returned to heaven and attained the Tao. And Sujun really he resembled exactly like those righteous kings in the ancient time who held the same heaven's mandate to pass down the Tao lineage, although he didn't have the title to match it, but he did the work. And he was known as the 18th patriarch in the Tao heritage. And heaven and mankind mourned the loss of Sujun. He was 59 years old and conferred by God as Tenyan ancient Buddha. This image here is very precious. It's the 1-year anniversary after Sujun attained the Tao, where we could see all the Tao elders, senior disciples, grand predecessor, his own family gather to commemorate and honor Sujun's sacrifice and his contribution to mankind. Okay, so in conclusion, the holy mission and legacy of Sujun. Our Sujun propagated Tao under calamities and unspeakable suffering throughout his entire life. There's so many people still suffer now, although we don't have the wars, right? But we have a different kind of war, right? The wars of the mind, right? And so the essence of Sujun's holy mission and legacy is in ferrying and encouraging people to cultivate and propagate Tao so that all of us can restore our true nature, dissolve calamities from our minds, and then be able to remove the ones physically that we live in, right? So it is our mission too to continue their universal salvation. So Sujun has 3 great vows. One is from absolute heaven, ferry and transform sentient beings to return to their origin. 2, from the mundane world, transform people and societies by innate virtues and bring about world unity. And then 3, continue the ancient sages, those 64 patriarchs, matriarchs, holy mission, and develop the same path forward. Restore the culture of Tao heritage since the ancient time. So the Tao that we are cultivating and propagating is exactly the same as the first patriarch all the way to now, our last patriarch, Sujun and Sumu. And hopefully that we can be inspired by learning the mission and the legacy of Sujun to do more and help other people. So I'm finished with this class. If I have misspoken, I ask for saints and Buddhas for forgiveness, ask for Sujun's forgiveness, and transmitters corrections, lecturers correction as well. And I would just like to say that I would like to dedicate tonight's class, the merit from tonight's class to lecturer Jin Situ, who is hospitalized. I hope we all should pray for her for the Buddhas to bless her and to help her. Thank you. 感谢天师的，感谢老前言前言大的，thanks senior transmitter, all transmitters, lecturers, and all of you. Thank you.